Hello, everyone. Happy Friday. We made it. Another week down. Spring equinox is all around us, which is very, very exciting. Today, intro to deities. Very exciting with the Blue Witch. And there's a lot of events coming up, and make sure you check out our newsletter or our Facebook page tomorrow. There's going to be an exciting new kind of competition. I'll just say, lace up your witchy boots and get ready. It's going to be a lot of fun and big prizes. So, without further ado, I'm going to hand it over to the Blue Witch. Hopefully, everyone can hear. Fran may need to go out and come back in. We are live. You can't see or hear us. Go out and come back in. All right. All right, everybody. Without further ado, intro to deities.
Hey, so I wanted to start because I'm going to go ahead and throw this out here right now at the beginning so that it's like so that you have time to make your decisions or whatever, and then I'll just kind of recap it at the end. But there's a member of the Blue Witch community that is her niece is struggling right now. She's very sick. They are not quite sure how to help her anymore. So we kind of came together as a community and decided that if you would like to light a candle, dressed or undressed is fine, put some intention in there, a road opener, I guess, if you will, just to kind of clear the path that the right doctors can find her. We would really appreciate that. And we all plan to light our candles at 9 p.m. Eastern tonight. We wanted to do it all together to send a big burst of just really good energy, throw a little bit of healing or comfort or whatever you feel like you want to throw in there. But I just wanted to let you know that that was happening because she's a big part of the community. So I don't want to put all of her information out there, but we love her. We love her very much. So anything that we can do to help would be amazing. Um, Also, let's just go ahead and do the normal, take a breath, just kind of settle in here. I don't want to jump straight into information without you actually arriving into the space because the way you receive this is going to matter just as much as what I'm saying. So let's just take a breath. Nothing dramatic, just like usual. Normal inhale, exhale. Let your shoulders drop, unclench your jaw, remove your tongue from the top of your mouth. Let your body catch up to you. You don't have to be in like a perfect spiritual state though. You just need to be present enough to actually take this in because I can get a little bit passionate on this subject. So before we get into anything, I just want to set the tone for this conversation because deity work is one of those topics that is either overly romanticized or overly feared. And both of those extremes create problems. So it's like on one side, you have people who treat deity work like an aesthetic and it's all vibes and candles and mood boards. This deity chose me. And there's very little structure or discernment or sometimes even understanding of what's actually happening. And then on the other side, you have people who make it sound absolutely freaking terrifying. Like if you breathe wrong, you're going to offend a god and your entire life is going to fall apart. So neither of those are accurate fully. And deity work is a relationship, just like any other relationship. And it requires mutual respect and clear communication and boundaries and discernment. And that last one, discernment, is going to be a theme throughout everything that we talk about today because I'm not here to convince you that every little thing is a sign, but I'm definitely not here to validate delusion either. So I'm here to help you build something that is actually stable and grounded and real. So let's start with a question that people don't really ask enough. Why do you want to work with a deity? What is your reason for that in the first place? Like, really ask yourself that internally, not the surface level answer. Like, not the because I feel called or because I'm curious. I need you to go a layer deeper here. Like, is it because you're looking for guidance? Is it because you're looking for support or power or validation? Do you need a sense of belonging? Um, L guidance, a connection to something bigger than you, maybe. None of those are wrong. Being honest about your motivation matters because your motivation is going to shape your experience. That's why we're asking the question in the first place. So, if you're approaching deity work from a place of insecurity or needing validation, you're more likely to project meaning onto things that aren't actually there. And if you're approaching it from curiosity and grounded interest, you're more likely to observe and learn and build something real over time. And this is where, like, a lot of people get tripped up because they assume that feeling drawn to a deity automatically means that that deity is reaching out to them. And sometimes that's true, but sometimes it's not. Sometimes you're drawn to a deity because something about them resonates with you psychologically, emotionally, symbolically, and that doesn't make it fake. It just means that the connection's starting from you, not necessarily from them. And here's the thing that people don't say enough is that you're allowed to initiate that. It can start with you. You don't have to sit around and wait to be chosen like you're in some kind of spiritual draft pick. Like, if you feel drawn to a deity, you can choose to learn about them. You can connect with their energy, see what develops. Not everything has to start with a big dramatic sign or life changing, altering experience. In fact, like, a lot of genuine connections don't start that way. They build slowly and quietly and consistently. But I get it. Everyone wants a sign. Everyone wants confirmation. Everyone wants that moment where it's like, this deity is 100% reaching out to me, and there's no doubt. And I get that. That would make things a lot easier. But the reality is, most signs are subtle. Sometimes they are in your face like that. But more importantly, it's most things people think are signs just sometimes aren't. Like seeing a TikTok, I get this all the time on TikTok. Seeing a TikTok about a deity is not a sign. Even when you see that video, or even when you see multiple videos of a deity, say you've seen like 5 or 6 of them that day, if you're interacting with those posts or you watch that post for more than 3 seconds, the algorithm is trained to show you more of what you watch. So that's not really a sign. Seeing their name randomly once is not a sign. Um, Dreaming about something vaguely related one time is also not a sign. Um, a sign is something that is repetitive, it's specific, it is contextually relevant to you. It's not random, it's not vague, it's not easily explainable by your algorithm or your environment. And even then, sometimes don't immediately jump to conclusions. You observe, you track patterns, you stay neutral, because discernment is not about like shutting things down. It's about not rushing in to label something before you actually understand it. Now, let's talk about what it actually looks like to begin working with a deity in a real grounded way. And I'm going to keep this simple as possible, because people overcomplicate this a lot. So, step one, learn before you try to connect, before you set up an altar, before you start making offerings. Learn about the deity. And I don't mean just like reading one summary post or something, or like Googling it. Look into their mythology, look into their cultural context, how they've been traditionally worked with, what they represent, how people are currently working with them. Because if you skip this step, you end up building a connection based on assumptions instead of understanding. And that's not respectful. It's also not effective. Um, Step two is going to be to observe your own experience. As you're learning, pay attention to how you feel. Just notice it. Do you feel more focused when you think about them? Do certain themes start showing up in your life? Do you feel neutral or interested or disconnected? You're not forcing anything. You're just observing what's naturally happening. And then there's like, this is going to bring us to like step three. Start small. You don't need a full altar. You don't need expensive tools. You don't need to go all in immediately. You can start with something as simple as setting aside a moment of time, speaking to them respectfully, offering something small like water, a candle, or even your attention or a service in public. You know, you've done it, you've performed an act in their honor, something small. Um, Consistency matters more than intensity, and a small, consistent effort builds more than a big one time gesture. And this is like something else that I don't think people talk about enough with deity work is boundaries. Because yes, even in deity work, even a healthy spiritual relationship should not feel overwhelming. It shouldn't feel intrusive. It should not feel consuming. If you feel like you're constantly being watched or pressured or like you have a train, if you like you have to do something or something bad's going to happen to you, that's not a healthy dynamic. And I don't care what you've heard, no deity worth working with is going to operate through fear and intimidation. Respect, yes. Accountability, yes. But fear based control, no. You're allowed to set boundaries. You're allowed to say no. You're allowed to take breaks, move at your own pace. This is a relationship, it's not a contract that you are trapped in. Okay. So let's shift into something a little deeper, how communication actually works, because this is where people either expect too much too quickly or they miss what's actually happening. Deities are not typically showing up like full physical apparitions, having conversations with you in your living room like depicted on TikTok. It just doesn't work that way. Um, if that's what you're expecting, it's probably going to feel like nothing's happening because communication is usually subtle. It can come through intuition, dreams, patterns, sudden insights, or emotional shifts, symbolic experiences. And the key is learning how to recognize it without forcing it. Because if you're trying too hard to interpret everything as a message, you're going to start creating meaning where there isn't any. But if you stay aware and grounded, you'll start to notice when something feels different, when it has weight, when it's consistent, when it's not just your usual internal dialogue. And this is where we're going to start getting into some of the more like nuanced aspects of communication, because not all messages come through the same way and not all of them are going to be obvious, especially when we start talking about things like dreams and symbolic language, and the ways that your mind translates spiritual interaction into something that you can actually process, because your mind is not going to hand you a message in a clean labeled format like, hello, this is a deity speaking, here's your instructions for the day. It doesn't work like that either. So everything has to pass through your own internal dialogue system first. Your brain, your subconscious, your memory, your emotional associations, all of that acts as a translator. So if something external is reaching out, what you receive is still going to be filtered through you. And this is why like two people can connect with the same deity and have completely different experiences, because it's not just about the source, it's about the receiver. So um, let's talk about one of the most misunderstood ways that communication can come through, and that is dreams. We just had like the introduction to dreams webinar, but this is like a whole different ball game, right? So I'm going to say this up front again because it needs to be repeated. Not every dream is spiritual, but dreams are one of the easiest spaces for communication to happen if something is going to reach you, because your conscious mind is quiet, your defenses are down, and your awareness is more flexible during that time. You're not overthinking, you're not analyzing in real time, you're just experiencing. and that makes it a very accessible channel for them. But again, here's where people get tripped up is they either assume that every dream is a message or completely dismiss dreams because they don't understand them. And we're not going to do either of those. We're going to get specific. So let's talk about how to tell the difference between a standard processing dream and something that might actually hold intuitive or spiritual significance because they feel different. A normal processing dream usually has that chaotic, almost random quality. The setting changes, people morph into other people, the storyline doesn't quite make sense. You wake up and you're like, okay, that was weird. And then it like fades away pretty quickly. Your brain, that's your brain like sorting through information and emotions and experiences. It's useful, but it's not necessarily a message. Now, a dream that carries intuitive or external energy tends to feel more intentional. So the environment is more stable. The intentions feel direct. There is a sense of awareness, even if you're not fully lucid. And the biggest indicator is going to be that you remember it, not just for 5 seconds. After you wake up, you remember it throughout the day. It sticks, it has weight. Sometimes it feels even more vivid than real life because the colors are sharper or emotions are stronger. And there's like this underlying sense of this mattered to you. So that is when you want to pay attention. Now, your mind will still translate that experience into symbolism. It's still going to do that. Even if a deity is communicating, you're not necessarily going to see them in their full literal form. Sometimes you will, but more often your brain is going to use imagery that you can actually process. So instead of seeing a deity exactly as they are like traditionally depicted, you might see a figure that represents them symbolically, um, an environment that might be associated with them, repeated themes connected to their energy. And this is where people either overcomplicate it or completely miss the point because they're looking for something obvious, like they show up, they introduced themselves and told me their name, you know. And when that doesn't happen, it's like they assume that it wasn't real. But communication doesn't need to be obvious to be valid. It just needs to be consistent. So instead of asking like, was this dream a message? Start asking, is there a pattern forming? So that's where like tracking your dreams, keeping a dream journal and things like that are really going to come in handy so you can go back and look and recognize those patterns. Are there similar themes showing up? Are you having multiple dreams with the same tone, the same type of interaction, the same underlying feeling? Because repetition is how your mind and anything external gets your attention. Um, One random dream could be anything. Three, four, five dreams with similar elements. Now we're having a conversation, right? So let's talk about interpretation. Your subconscious speaks in symbolism, so it uses your personal language, not like TikTok's, not mine, not something you've heard somewhere else, not a dream dictionary form or Google. It uses your own symbolism that you are aware of. So if you dream about water, the meaning is not automatically emotion just because that's what people say. You have to ask yourself, what does water mean to you? Is it calming? Is it overwhelming? Is it connected to a memory? Is there something that you're afraid of? Um, your personal association is the starting point. Then and only then can you layer in broader symbolic meanings if they actually fit. There's a difference between symbolism and projection. Symbolism is when something naturally represents an idea or feeling in a way that makes sense. Um, and projection is when you're trying to force meaning onto something because you want it to mean something. And I'm going to be honest with you, if you're reaching for an interpretation, it's probably not accurate. Real insight feels obvious, not in a loud or dramatic way, but in a way where it clicks. You look at it and go, "Oh yeah, like that makes total sense." There's a level of recognition happening. So, let's look at lucid dreaming because once you start becoming aware in your dreams, everything shifts. Like lucid dreaming is when you realize that you're dreaming, like you realize that you're dreaming while you're still in the dream. And the moment that that happens, you're no longer just passively experiencing, you're participating. Now, most people hear about lucid dreaming and immediately think that it's about control or flying around or changing the environment, doing whatever you want. And yes, you can do that. But here's what people don't tell you: the more you try to control everything, the more unstable the dream becomes. Um, it starts to break down. You wake up, the environment collapses, things stop responding because you're overriding the natural flow of the experience. So lucid dreaming works better when you treat it like an interaction instead of a takeover. So instead of trying to control everything, try engaging with it. Ask questions. Ask questions. If you see a figure, ask who they are. If you're in a place, ask what it represents. Um, if something feels significant, focus on it and see what happens. And this is where things get really like interesting, because sometimes the responses that you get are not what you would consciously come up with. They can be surprising, surprisingly specific, sometimes even a little too accurate. And that's when you start to realize that you're not just making things up. Now, quick practical tip, real fast. If you ever become aware that you're dreaming and things start to fade or destabilize, look at your hands. Touch something in the environment that you're in, because engaging your senses in the dream helps stabilize your awareness and it keeps you there longer. It sounds simple, but it works. So, before we move further into things like deeper dream interaction and even astral experiences, I just want to slow this down for a second, because this is where people get excited and then immediately try to jump 10 steps ahead. So, you do not need to master lucid dreaming. You do not need to force dream communication. You do not need to have some kind of intense experience to be doing this right. The goal is not to collect experiences. The goal is to build accuracy, because without accuracy, you're just stacking moments that you don't fully understand. And that's how confusion starts. So everything we're talking about here, dream, symbolism, interaction, it all comes back to awareness first. So understanding what's yours, understanding your mind, how your mind communicates, understanding your patterns. Because the moment that something feels unfamiliar, it's very easy to jump to conclusions like, oh, this must be a deity. Oh, this must be a message. This must mean something big, right? And sometimes, yes, it does, but not always. So, what we're going to do now is talk about how to actually test and validate your experiences without killing the connection or over spiritualizing it. Because this is the part that separates a grounded practice from a chaotic one. So, let's say that you've been having repeated dreams with a similar theme, or you're feeling drawn to a specific deity. Or you're noticing patterns that feel a little too consistent to be random. the the first instinct is usually to label it immediately, but we're not going to do that. We're going to slow it down, and we're first going to observe without assigning a meaning. I know that's not as exciting, but it's necessary. Just because something feels significant doesn't mean that you need to define it right away. Just let it happen a few times, let it develop, and let it show you more. Because when something is real, whether it's coming from your subconscious or something external, it will continue. It doesn't rely on you reacting instantly. So then you're going to next look for consistency across different states. And this is where things first start to get interesting. If something is only showing up in one place, like only in dreams or only when you're actively thinking about it, it's more likely to be internal. But if you start noticing the same things showing up in dreams, in your waking thoughts, and things that you come across randomly in your emotional responses, now you're looking at something that is moving across layers of your awareness. And that is when you pay closer attention, because real patterns don't stay contained, right? Like they echo out. So, this is how you're going to test the interaction. This is like something that a lot of people skip because they either don't think to do it, or they're just sometimes afraid to. but you're allowed to ask for clarification. You're allowed to set parameters. You're allowed to say, if this is actually something external, show me in a way that is clear and that is specific and not easily explainable, um, not vague, not like, don't ask, like, just give me a sign. Be specific, because if you leave it open ended, your brain will fill in the gaps itself, and that's not what you want. But if you ask for something structured, then you're creating a way to differentiate between imagination and interaction. And this is, it's not about demanding or being disrespectful. It's just about clarity. Um, you're not testing a deity like they're on trial. You're not like, throwing it like I don't believe you. It's not like that. You're making sure that you are interpreting your experience correctly. And any legitimate connection is not going to fall apart because you asked for clarity. If anything, it's going to become more defined. So let's talk about something that people don't always expect. Sometimes you'll reach out and nothing happens. Like, no signs, no dreams, no feelings, nothing, right? And people immediately go to two places: I did something wrong, or they don't want to work with me. And most of the time, neither one of those are true. Sometimes nothing happens because you're still building awareness. You're expecting something too specific, or you're not recognizing like subtle responses, or simply because it's not time yet. Not everything is immediate. And this is where patience becomes part of the practice, because if you only trust what is loud and obvious and immediate, you're going to miss a lot of what is actually happening. So, this is this is one of the most reliable indicators that you have. Sorry, my voice is going out. Pay attention to how pay attention to how an interaction feels, not just during it, but after. A healthy, aligned interaction, whether it's internal or external, tends to leave you feeling clear and grounded and focused, sometimes even challenged, but in a way that is constructive. Um, Not drained, not anxious, not confused, or to the point of spiraling out. If something leaves you feeling chaotic or fearful, or like you're losing your sense of stability, that's a sign to pause and reassess. So I guess maybe that is a sign. You should pause and reassess that, though. Not everything that feels intense is meaningful in a positive way. And I'm going to say something that might not be popular, but it's true. Spiritual experiences should not destabilize you. They might push you, they might challenge you, they might bring you to the surface of something that you need to deal with, but they should not make you feel like you're losing control of yourself or your reality. If that's happening, then something needs to be grounded, not pursued further. Now, let's back this back up, because everything that we've talked about, dreams, patterns, interpretation, discernment, this is the foundation of how communication develops, not through one big moment, not through, but like, but consistent, layered experiences that start to build on each other. You want multiple experiences happening before you jump to that conclusion that you're being called or that you're being answered. And here's something that people don't realize until that they've been doing this for a while, that a lot of deity communication is not about getting answers. It's about developing awareness, because the more aware you become of your own patterns, your own thoughts, your own emotional responses, the easier it is to recognize when something's coming from outside of that. It's like learning your own voice so well that you can immediately tell when something doesn't sound like you. And that takes time, it takes patience. It takes not rushing the process, because just because you want something to happen. Because when something does happen, you want to be able to recognize it clearly, not question whether or not you made it up. So, before we move forward, I just want to touch on something that a lot of people are curious about, but don't always ask directly. And that's, what does it actually feel like when a deity is present? Um, so, the answer to that in a non dramatic or cinematic way, um, is that it's a grounded sense. The answer is that, and it varies. It may help. It may make you feel grounded. But there's some common threads. There's some common threads. It usually doesn't feel chaotic. It doesn't feel frantic. It doesn't feel like something's trying to overwhelm you. If anything, it often feels very contained, focused, intentional, and like I said, grounded in its own way. Sometimes it can feel like a shift in the atmosphere. Like the energy in the room just changes slightly. Sometimes it comes through as a very clear thought that feels different from your normal thinking pattern. Not louder, just more direct. Sometimes it's a feeling, a presence that you can't fully explain, but you're aware of it. And here's the key: you're still you. You're not being taken over. You're not losing control. You're not disassociating. You're aware. You're present. You're grounded while you're feeling all of those things. Okay. Not, it's just, you're just not alone in the same way that you were before. And that distinction is really important. It's hard to explain because there's a difference between like connection and losing yourself. And in healthy deity work, you are always still yourself. Okay. Which brings us into something that is like really important to understand before you go any deeper into this kind of practice, which is the difference between connection and dependency. And I'm covering this because I have seen time and time again in TikTok after TikTok after TikTok of people that are like these just crazy, wild, made up scenarios that they truly believe that they're experiencing. But I'm like, girl, you're in spiritual psychosis. Like, wake up, because that's not. I don't know why people put stuff out there like that. It's so far from the truth. So be careful of what you're watching and taking in and believing, because it's just not how it works. So, anyways, this is where a lot of people just unintentionally create unhealthy dynamics and sometimes without even realizing it. But a connection enhances your awareness. It enhances your growth, your understanding. Dependency replaces your decision making, your sense of self, and your autonomy. And in deity work, you want the first one, not the second one. If you ever find yourself in a place where you feel like I can't make a decision without asking them, or I need constant signs or reassurance, if I don't do this, something bad's going to happen. That is not a healthy dynamic. I know it's hard probably maybe to recognize that when you're in it, but that's not healthy. And you need to try to be aware of how you're making these connections and how you're feeling during them. That's not empowerment. That's giving your power away. And I don't care how spiritual something feels, if it's removing your ability to think and choose and act for yourself, it needs to be reevaluated. Because any legitimate spiritual relationship, especially with a deity, is not going to require you to shrink down. It's going to require you to step up. More awareness, more responsibility, more honesty with yourself, not less. So let's talk about how to keep your practice grounded and balanced as things start to develop. Because once you move past the beginner curiosity phase and start actually experiencing things like patterns and dreams and moments of connection, it can be easy to get caught up in it. So you start looking for it everywhere. You start analyzing everything. You start wondering if every little thing means something, and before you know it, you're just overwhelmed. So here's your anchor. Not everything needs to be interpreted. You're allowed to experience something without turning it into a message. You're allowed to have a moment and acknowledge it and then move on. Because when you try to extract meaning from everything, you dilute the things that actually matter. The real signals get lost in all the noise that you're creating and you no longer see them. So let's talk about offerings, because this is something that also people overdo or completely misunderstand. So offerings are not about like proving yourself. You're not they're not about trying to impress the deity. You're not trying to impress them. They're not about giving something in exchange for something else, like it's a transaction. An offering is a gesture of respect and acknowledgement. That's it. It doesn't have to be elaborate. So people will go out and spend money on all these items and build these massive altars and feel like if they don't keep up with that, they're doing something wrong. And you're not. Consistency matters more than intensity. So a simple offering given with intention is more meaningful than something elaborate that feels forced or unsustainable. You can't buy a connection. Okay, so these things, they deities appreciate them, but those are not important to a deity. That's not what the deity is there for. No amount of candles, crystals, or expensive items is going to create something that isn't already developing naturally. So if you're doing a lot externally, but there's no internal shift, no awareness, no connection building, that's something to pay attention to, because the relationship is not built through objects. It is built through interaction and awareness and consistency. So let's get into communication a little bit more directly, because at some point people start asking, okay, so, but how do I talk with them? And the answer is you just talk. Just talk. Not in a performative way. It doesn't have to be scripted or like incantations or overly formal, unless that feels natural to you. But just speak out loud or in your mind, clearly, respectfully, and directly. You don't need special language. You don't need to sound poetic, and you don't need to overthink it. Because again, this is a relationship. And if you can't communicate naturally, the connection isn't going to feel natural. Now, will you always get a response? No, at least not in a way that you immediately recognize. And that's where people get frustrated, because they're expecting like this back and forth conversation. And when that doesn't happen, they assume that nothing is there. But communication doesn't always look like a response in the moment. And I think, again, that expectation comes from the way social media has now depicted relationships with deities. So sometimes the answer will show up later in a realization, in a pattern, a shift in your perspective on something. And this is why patience matters so much, because if you're only paying attention to immediate responses, you're going to miss the delayed ones. And something else, I guess, that people do get curious about, but they also tend to misunderstand, divination, things like tarot, when the communication comes through tarot, pendulums, or oracle cards. Can you use those to communicate with deities? Yes. But I always have a but, don't I? And this is important. They're still tools that filter through you. So if your interpretation skills aren't strong yet, or if you're emotionally invested in a certain answer, those tools can reflect that. They don't override your bias automatically, which means that you're still going to need to use discernment, because when you use tools like that, they work through you. They are causing the little micro movements. They are causing you to choose things, but then when you interpret it, it's still running through here. So if you're projecting or you're trying to reach, you're still gonna see things differently. Um, so you just need to ask yourself, if you're reading this clearly, um, am I reading what I or am I reading what I want to see? And that takes practice. So if you're using divination, use it as a support, not as your only method of communication. Because if you rely on it for everything, you start disconnecting from your own intuitive awareness. And we don't want to do that. We want both. Now, let's shift into something a little more subtle. How your everyday life starts to reflect your practice. Because one of the biggest misconceptions is that deity work is separate from your normal life, like it only exists during rituals or offerings or specific moments. But in reality, if a connection is developing, it starts to show up in how you think, how you respond, how you move through situations. and you might notice changes in your perspective, shifts in your priorities, increased awareness of certain patterns, a stronger sense of direction in certain areas of your life. And it's not always dramatic. Sometimes it's very subtle, but it's consistent. And that's how you know that something is integrating, not just happening in isolated moments. Now, I want to touch on something that people don't always expect, but also it's important. Not every connection is meant to last forever, as sad as that sounds. And that doesn't mean that something went wrong. Sometimes a deity comes into your awareness for a period of time because there's something specific that you're meant to learn or experience or develop. And once that's integrated, the intensity of that connection might shift. It might become quieter or less active or more in the background. And it doesn't mean that you were rejected. And it does not mean that you failed. It just means that the dynamic has now changed. So it's just like people, right? Like they say, they come into your life for a reason, a season, or however the saying goes. So think of it like that. You can have a lasting connection, but it may not always be as strong as it is when you need it. Um, so the part of and a part of this practice is being able to recognize when something is evolving instead of trying to hold on to it in the exact same way and keep it the way you like it, the way it was, right? Because growth requires movement and not everything is meant to stay in the same form forever. Which brings us into something that I really want you to understand before we go deeper into this, because it's going to save you a lot of confusion later on. You are not trying to become someone else through this work. And I know that sounds obvious, but just think about it for a second, because it happens all the time in ways that people don't even notice. They start working with a deity and suddenly they feel like they need to act a certain way or dress a certain way or take on certain traits, or they reshape their entire personality to match that energy. And listen, resonance is real. It's like you might notice yourself naturally aligning with certain qualities or perspectives and behaviors, but there's a difference between like integration and imitation. um, Integration is natural. It happens gradually. It feels like an expansion of who you already are. Imitation feels forced. It feels like you're performing, like you're trying to fit into something instead of actually growing into it. And if you catch yourself performing, just pause, because my voice is going to go out again. Because deity work is not about becoming a copy of something external. It's about developing your own awareness and your own strength and your own understanding with that connection as support, not replacement. Now, let's get into something else here. You're gonna question yourself. You're gonna wonder if you made something up. If you're reading too much into things, if any of this is actually real, like you'll wonder if it's actually real, and you can't stop that. It's human nature. Um, and instead of seeing that as a problem, I want you to see it as a necessary part of the process, because doubt forces you to refine your discernment. Um, if we just never doubted anything, we wouldn't even need our discernment, right? If you never questioned anything, you would just believe everything. And that's how people lose accuracy completely. So, doubt is not your enemy, it's a filter. The goal is not to eliminate doubt, it's to balance it. Enough openness to receive, enough skepticism to question. That's a middle ground. That's where clarity happens. So, um, let's talk about something that people don't like to admit, because absolutely needs to be addressed also. Wanting something to be true. Because desire can blur your perception faster than anything else. If you want a specific deity to be reaching out to you, your brain will start connecting dots that are not actually there to be connected in the first place. You'll start seeing patterns that aren't really there. You'll start interpreting neutral experiences as confirmation, not because you're doing something wrong, but because your brain is trying to fulfill the expectation that you have now set. And this is why staying neutral in the beginning is so important. Not disconnected or closed off, just neutral, open to possibility, but not attached to a specific outcome. Because the more attached you are to something being true, the harder it is to see what's actually happening. So, and then, you know, as you continue this kind of work, your awareness doesn't stay the same. It sharpens. Um, you start noticing more. You start feeling more. You start picking up on things that you didn't before. And at first, that can feel really exciting. But if you don't stay grounded, it can also become overwhelming because suddenly it's like you're asking, oh, why am I feeling this? Where is this coming from? Is this mine or is it something else? And this is where people start to spiral. Let me simplify this a little bit for you. Not everything that you feel is external. In fact, a lot of what you feel is still yours, your emotions, your reactions, your internal state. So even if your awareness is expanding, your baseline doesn't disappear. So before you assume that something's coming from outside of you, check in with yourself first. What are you feeling? What's been happening in your life? Does this connect to anything that you've experienced recently? Because your internal state will always be the first layer. And once you understand that, then you can start recognizing when something feels different from that. So, um, let's talk about another thing people are pretty curious about, but they don't always approach carefully, and that's astral travel. I I skipped this in the whole intro to dreams because I don't feel that it's safe without learning more about it. But I'm going to bring this in here. Um, and I'm going to be very real with you. Astral travel is not something that you need to rush into. It's not a requirement for deity work, and it's not a sign of being advanced. It's just another way of experiencing consciousness. And yes, it can happen naturally. A lot of people do it naturally. Sometimes people will have experiences where they feel like they've left their body, or they're moving through a different space, or interacting in a way that feels separate from physical reality. And those experiences can be very vivid and very real. But here's the part that matters about that. Um, if you don't already have a strong sense of awareness and grounding, those experiences can be very confusing because you won't know how to interpret them. You won't know what's coming from you, what's symbolic, what something else is. So, again, we come back to foundation, understanding your dreams and understanding the patterns, understanding your internal responses to things, because astral experiences often feel very similar to dreams, but with more awareness. And if you can't navigate one, the other is just going to feel like chaos. Now, here's something interesting. Your mind will still use the symbolism even in the more advanced states. So even if you're experiencing something that feels like astral travel or direct interaction, what you see and experience is still going to be translated into something that you can understand, which means not everything is literal. And that's where people they stumble over that. They take everything at face value instead of asking, what is this representing? What does this mean in context? Because again, translation is always happening. So let's bring this back to how to stay grounded while all of this is developing. Because the more open you become, the more important grounding becomes. And grounding does not have to be complicated. It's not about doing some long ritual every time you feel a little off. It's about staying connected to your physical reality, your body, your environment, your routine, just simple things. Eat regularly, stay hydrated, go outside, move your body, engage with your normal life. Because if your entire focus becomes internal or spiritual, you lose balance. And once you lose balance, your perception gets distorted. So the goal is not to go deeper at the expense of everything else. The goal is to expand your awareness while staying stable, because stability is what allows you to interpret things clearly. So there's one more thing that I want to make clear, because it'll change how you approach all of this moving forward. You're allowed to move at your own pace. There's no timeline that you're behind on. There's no level that you're supposed to reach by a certain point. There's no moment that you're suddenly going to become advanced and everything clicks perfectly. This is a practice. And like any practice, it develops over time through consistency, not intensity. So if you take anything from this, let it be this: you do not need to rush to have experiences. You do not need to force connections. You do not need to prove anything to anyone, especially not spirituality. The most accurate, grounded, and real connections are built slowly. They are built through paying attention, through learning your own patterns, through noticing what's consistent, what's shifting, what actually holds weight over time, not through the big moments that you try to create or chase. And I want to bring this full circle for a second look, to the beginning of what we talked about. Deity work is a relationship, and relationships are not built in a day. They're not. They're built through showing up, through being present and learning and adjusting and allowing things to develop naturally. And some of you might leave this and realize that you're not actually ready to start working with the deity yet. You just need to understand it better, and that's valid. Some of you might realize that you've already been experiencing things, but you didn't have the framework to understand them, and that's also valid. Some of you might start exploring this and find that your connection builds very quickly, and some of you might not notice much at first at all. All of that is normal. It's all, everyone's different. There's no single correct experience. What matters is that you stay grounded, that you're honest with yourself, and you're willing to question what you're experiencing without shutting yourself off from it. That balance between openness and discernment is what keeps this practice stable. So, I just want to leave you with at least like a few simple anchors that you can come back to anytime that you feel unsure. If something is real, it will be consistent. If something is aligned, it will not make you feel like you're losing yourself. If something is meant for you, you won't have to force it into happening. And most importantly, you are still the one living your life. No matter what connections you build, no matter what your experience, you're still responsible for your choices, for your actions, and your direction. Nothing replaces that. And that's a good thing, because this work is not about giving your power away, it's about understanding how to stand in it more clearly. So, I have a little bit more time. Um, I want to get, I guess, maybe a little more specific. So, what you're going to do, like because I know some of you are in here just, you're curious, and some of you are working with deities, and some of you are feeling called to deities. And maybe you're just not sure how to initiate that or start that first connection. So I just want to talk about that. Again, you don't need a full altar. What you can start with is a glass of water. Start with a glass of water, sit it down, maybe have a picture or something symbolic of that deity, a little statue or a picture or something that your mind associates with that deity behind your glass of water. And then you can, oh, thank you, Robin. And then you can put a candle, a white candle or a black candle is fine. Purple, if you want to, if you're doing like color magic and you want to enhance, intuition or spiritual experiences, that's usually for like, that's purple. So you can use any of those colors and then light that and just sit. You've given this deity the option of the water. You have made the association. You have lit a candle. You have now initiated contact. And that's all you need to do. And like I said, you might not feel anything. Maybe nothing happens at all. And that might be that way for a week straight. It's going to get aggravating. It might get frustrating. But that consistency, right? Keep saying that word. So keep trying if you're wanting that connection. Because a lot of deities have their own associations. For instance, I mean, we're all pretty familiar with Hecate, the Morrigan, um, Nyx, or Bridget, or, you know, there's many different pantheons, but each one has their associations. Each one has their things that they can teach you. So I personally right now work with Hecate. Um, when that work is done, once I have worked through my shit, so to speak, right? I've done my shadow work and I've figured out my path and where I'm going, as much as I don't want her to, because I enjoy our work. I enjoy the little signs and the little nudges and the guidance and feeling that presence, and, you know, being able to have her to just to know that she's looking out, right? And that she's bringing things to my attention. But when that's all said and done at the end of the day, and I've made it through all that, she most likely will fade. She will fade into the background. Okay, queen, you're good to go. I gotta go help somebody else, type thing. And that's what happens, and that's why people get like really, because you develop attachments. You develop attachments to them, whether you're trying to or not. You put in the work. You have made this connection. You've built this relationship, and then when it starts to kind of fade off, you're like, wait, like what did I do? Why are come back? You know, but they're not gonna come back because they've done what they needed to do for you. Um, so just keep that in mind as you're building your relationship. That this isn't like a well, we're in witchcraft. This is witchcraft, not church. Okay, I don't know how else to put that. We're not worshiping these deities for an indefinite amount of time. You can honor them. You can honor them. You can accept the guidance, but they are not, generally speaking. Some of them are. I'm like, yeah, there's lots of gods and goddesses out there. I'm not familiar with all of them, but generally speaking, it's not like a follow this set of rules, do what I say, or I'm gonna whatever. That's it's not how it works. They're here to help you. They're here to teach you. They're here to guide you and facilitate growth. And if you're not getting that out of your relationship with them, either you are working with the wrong deity and you need something from someone else. Look into like the troubles that you're experiencing in your life, the hardships that you're going through, um, the things that you need help with. Look into what deities work with those things. If if you're in a music career, Coco Pelli is the indigenous god of music and fertility. They all have different meanings. The Morrigan she's not even a deity. She's like a force, right? There's like, I don't know how many, a million personalities in the Morrigan. So she's very, like, get it done. um, and then you have much softer deities. You have like Aphrodite, and you have deities that, I mean, they all have their associate. You're just gonna have to look if you're feeling called to one and you initiate contact, or they initiate contact with you and you reciprocate and then nothing comes of it, even after being patient, waiting, observing, um, being consistent, and still nothing forms, maybe you just need a different deity. Maybe that deity takes a look at you and says, you're good. What I take care of, girl, you good. Go on. You just got to find the right one. You got to find the right one. And working with deities also, I haven't said this the entire webinar. Working with deities is not a requirement. You don't have to work with anyone. Just so that you know that. Don't feel like because you've went down this path and everybody works with somebody and da 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 da. I choose to do this because I want to. It's the same. It's my personality, right? I have 100 books because I like to see different perspectives. I look at different angles of everything that I teach because depending on what tradition or culture or background you come from, it's going to be different. So, depending on what level you're at, it's going to be different. There's a difference between a beginner dressing a candle and a novice witch of 30 years dressing a candle. They're different. That's all. Not right or wrong, just different. So, take that into consideration when you're choosing who to work with and the reasons why, because they matter. The reasons matter. Again, full circle back to what we talked about in the beginning when we're talking about ask yourself why you want to work with the deity. um, but also don't feel like you have to, because you don't. It's not a requirement. Nobody said you have to work with a deity. Don't do it if it's just to like feel important or fit in or something like that, because you can ruin a relationship with a deity if you come at it disrespectfully. Also, when you do initiate, make sure that, like I said, you look up their culture, where they're from, their background, their myths, their stories, how people honored them back then versus and how they're honoring them now, because it evolves, it changes. So um, they usually really like the traditional things, but sometimes we can't do the traditional things. Like, you know, um, Odin tends to gain, like I said in my video, Odin tends to gain knowledge through sacrifice. We don't really sacrifice straight up like that anymore, but there are other sacrifices that you can make, like in your day to day life. Maybe you sacrifice a half hour of scrolling time to sit with your deity. Maybe you sacrifice that TV show that you binge watch to pay a little bit of attention to your altar. Things like that. You gotta work it around in your brain, because once you put it to them like that and they understand it, and it's like, oh, okay. Something that Hagate really likes is when I pick up trash. Anytime I'm out, when I've always done this my whole life, but anytime I'm out, if I'm at like a park or a river or I'm hanging out somewhere and I see trash on the ground, I pick it up. And she loves it. So, um, how many, I see questions. It's been, let's get into questions, because I'm not sure like where you guys are at. You haven't been as talkative today as usual. So,
They've been listening. They've been
yeah.
listening. There's a lot of questions in here, so we'll jump into it. What about sleep paralysis? Does it ever relate to deities? I suffer from horrible sleep paralysis.
I wouldn't say that that's related to deities. Like I said, if you can explain what's happening to you away very simply, like, like with the TikTok algorithm example that I gave, I would not jump to conclusions. If that's something that's been happening to you and it's a regular pattern and you have sleep paralysis or diagnosed with sleep paralysis or you have to take medication for it, you probably just have sleep paralysis. I'm sorry. This is like, some of these questions are like, I know it's not going to be the answers that you want, but I'm going to be honest with you.
How can you tell if what you are experiencing in meditation is a deity speaking to you, or if it's just your own brain responding to itself? That's a great question.
So, if you want to know the difference, what you're going to do is, for number one, just pause and take like a mental note of how you're feeling. Note how your body feels. Did anything, if you suddenly feel like maybe there's a presence or maybe I'm imagining it, right? Take that second to ask yourself, like, did anything about my body change? Did my breathing change? Like your rate of your breath, or if you're breathing heavier or faster, did your pulse increase? Did something in the room shift? Do you feel a different energy? Um, and that's when you want to take that second to ask yourself, like, did that shift internally or did that shift externally? Either way, I mean, because they can show up either way. You have to use your discernment. And then what you're going to do is kind of take note of those answers to those questions. And then you're going to meditate again. And then you're going to see if it happens again. And then you're going to do it maybe 2 or 3 more times before you fully make the decision of like, hey, it's here. But you can also use that time to ask for clarification. Like I said, you can ask for clarification. So you can make it known to the deity, like, hey, you know, last time I meditated, I felt like maybe you were here because of this, 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 and this. That's why you're going to write it down. Write it down. So, so that you can be specific later and say, this is what I felt. If, if that was you, I either one, I need to feel that again so that I know for sure that it's you, or two, I wasn't unsure if that was you or not. And I don't think that that was a very good way for me to understand that you're here. So could you try to let me know in a different way and see what happens then?
All right. So would researching items in a deity keep showing up when researching be considered a sign to be open to?
So would researching items in a deity keep showing up when researching be considered a sign to be? It depends on if it's in conjunction with other things. So you're saying like, because that's where you get into the psychology of it. You're already researching it. So the discernment, you need to make sure that your brain is not creating pathways to things because you're taking in new information, you're learning new things, and you are going to, whether you consciously realize it or not, you will subconsciously start looking for those things. And that's when projection can happen, even though you don't mean to. But I'm not going to say no, that it's not. It just depends on what else is popping up. So if you're researching the items because, okay, let's say, how can I put this in an understandable? So as for Hecate, as example, um, I saw dogs. Um, I'm at a crossroads in my life, like, or not currently, but I was. I was at a crossroads in my life. I did need the guidance. I had hit rock bottom at one point, and I climbed back out. I was climbing back out of this hole. Um, all of those things relate to her stories and what she's there for you for. Now, on the other side of that, I I was sleeping one night and I got woke up out of a dead sleep by a single roof. It was like a pit bull standing right beside my head. And I don't have a dog, so it was a little unnerving and it was sudden, it was jarring, and I don't remember dreaming, which maybe I forgot as soon as I woke up because of the sudden, you know, but it was so loud and it was so real and it was so in my face that there was no denying that for me. And even though I knew that it felt that way, I still questioned it. And you know what she did? She put another bark right here beside me in a video while I was recording, and I caught it when I was editing. And you can hear a dog. My husband was like, "Was that a dog?" And we rewatched that video 100 times, trying to see if I hit something or if I knocked something over or if I did something that would have made that sound, and I didn't. But it sounds like a dog is barking right beside me, and I had that on video. And I didn't hear it during that time. It was only on the playback. So you know, things like that that cannot be explained away. There's no reason the neighbor behind me doesn't have a dog. I don't have a dog. There's no reason for that to have even existed in that video. That can't be explained. So that was like, okay, that's two dogs. So that's what you want to look for, those patterns. But like that stack. So it stacked with the dogs that I had seen. It stacked with my son got a snake. It stacked with the fact that I was at a crossroads, that I needed what she specifically provides. And then I get the barks. And so see what I'm saying? It's multiple in your face things.
What about not dreaming? I don't feel like I have any.
They'll find another way. They'll find another way. It'll start showing up in patterns or something someone says to you. And you can literally set an intention. Hecate, if you're here and you want to work with me, if you think I need your guidance, if you think that you have something that you could offer me that I could benefit from, get specific. Not too specific, because like they can only do so much in our world, but like show me two black dogs within the next 3 days. But then keep an open mind. Those black dogs might show up as strays in your yard. You might see a black, one in somebody's car one day, and the other one you might see in a TV commercial. be aware. And you'll, and again, okay, maybe that wasn't the best. You get what I'm saying, though. Maybe I was gonna say maybe that wasn't the best example, because then you'll be looking for black dogs everywhere. But like, you see what I'm saying? Where like, if you know, if you think that I can benefit from your guidance, find a way to show me that I'm gonna understand, that I will not be able to deny. And if it's there, they'll find a way. They will find a way to show you.
When working with multiple deities, how would one decipher which one is communicating or nudging versus just sticking with one at a time? Or should that only happen when one becomes more aware?
So here's the problem with that: is if you're working with multiple deities and you can't tell the difference between them, it's because you jumped into multiple deities too fast. Because when you start working with a deity and you build a slow, strong, stable connection and a healthy relationship with them, you become familiar with that energy. And then when something else comes in, you know that that's different. So you want to, if there are multiple, put it this way, okay, if there's multiple deities that you want to work with and you're just getting into this and maybe you haven't started working with them yet, one at a time. Build the relationship, give it time. I'm not saying, oh, build your relationship with this one for 2 weeks and then move to this one. No, I'm talking months, however long it takes you to become familiar with that deity's energy. Then move on to the next one. Add that one in. Now, how you do that, as far as like the altars or stuff, or if you choose to not have an altar, that's really honestly a whole different conversation. But like, you'll know the difference. You'll feel it. But the only way that you can is if you take the time to spend with one at a time. You have to start with one and then add that one. And once you understand how this one's energy feels and you can tell the difference between these two and you want to add a third one, then add the third one. But you're looking at like years to do that. Is honestly years, I would assume, of work to be able to build a relationship good enough to know those differences. And I'm not saying you can't, because you absolutely can. You definitely can. People do it all the time. But it takes time to be able to learn the differences in energies.
When I put flowers to sit on an altar, where do I dispose of them? At the moment, I take them to the beach or to the sea.
What you're doing is fine. That's fine. I mean, they're biodegradable. You're not littering or anything like that. You can bury them. If you don't wait for them to fully die, you could put them in a sachet and make yourself a fresh, well, as long as they're not poisonous or anything, a fresh little spiritual bath out of it because it's been charged on your altar. Um, I mean, what you're doing is fine though.
Mhm.
I like that idea. I like returning things to the earth, throwing them to the wind, sending them out to sea. That's poetically beautiful.
Is it okay to collect and create item crafts that represent specific deities or make aesthetic altars for them if you never feel the calling or actual relationship, or maybe don't realize it's there?
Yeah, you can. It's okay. It's okay to do that. If you feel, that's what I was saying. It's okay to initiate it yourself. If you want to work with a deity and you don't feel called to them, you can do that. You can initiate it. Um, like I said, just don't expect to get an instant answer unless you've done your research. If you are experiencing something and you have researched which god or goddess is the best one to help you with that, and then you reach out to that god or goddess, chances are you're going to make that connection. But if you have, like if you're looking to Odin for help in matters of love, it's probably not the best match. It's you know, just make sure you know who you're calling upon and for what. But now, if you just want to honor them just to honor them, or you're not actually looking to work with them, because that's how I started with Hecate. I didn't work with her. I didn't want anything from her when I first started my altar. I just honored her because I respected her from what I knew of her. So you can absolutely respect. I mean, like, I still have Cocapelli over my altar. I don't work with him anymore, but he's up there. because I did and I respect him.
Let's see. Does it only have to be a candle or can you burn incense?
You can burn incense. You can burn incense. You can even do like the little light up candles, you know, the little battery powered candles. They love those. They think those are the coolest things. But yeah, you can burn incense. You can but look up as far as when it comes to what kind of incense to burn, look up their associations. That's why I said where you need to research their myths and their legends, where they come from, their stories, their cultural backgrounds, because you want to, if you're sincerely trying to build a connection, you don't want to use something that has no relevance to them at all. You want to use what they like, what they're attracted to, what people have traditionally used, because they're going to recognize that.
And the last one we have in here, can you follow more than one?
Yep. Yep. Absolutely. I mean, and you can, if you just want to jump into three, you can do that. Like I said, don't, I tell people all the time, don't trust anybody, not even me. Question everything. It, I can only teach you from my experience and from what I know. And my opinions are going to, unfortunately, my opinions are always going to tarnish what I'm telling you sometimes, even when I try really hard not to. But I guess it is of my opinion to start one at a time so that you know those differences in energies and that you build those relationships one on one, and you can truly receive the guidance and that you know what's coming in and from where and for why. But that's just my opinion. If you want to jump into three deities, do it. If you work, if you want to be a little chaotic, if that matches your life, that matches your vibe, you feel aligned with that, do it. There's no like hard rules to any of it. It's your path. It's your spirituality. It's your spiritual journey. Nobody can tell you what's right for you or what's wrong for you. That is an internal thing that you have to figure that out for yourself. So, can you work with multiple deities or follow multiple deities? Absolutely. Absolutely. Like I said, people do it every day.
One more that just popped in here. I'm new to all this. Do you call onto them or do they call to you?
It can go either way. Sometimes sometimes it's hard for us to see that we need something when we're in the middle of it, and they can see it. It's like an outsider looking into a situation, you know, or like your best friend and their husband, and it's like they're arguing and you can clearly see the problem, but they can't because they're so busy doing whatever they're doing that they don't see it. So it's kind of the same way. They can see that we need things sometimes when we don't see it for ourselves, and that's when they will nudge you or send you little signs like, hey, come here, I have something to teach you, I have something to tell you. That's when you'll start getting the signs. Now, if you're aware enough to know that you have an issue, you've researched, you know who can help you with that, and you want to call on that deity, like I said, you can do the water and a picture and a candle. It's very simple. You can use the incense, you can use whatever you feel called to use. But the point is that you are intentionally initiating that contact, and that you are asking them for guidance, from a point of clarity and understanding. Be aware of what you're calling in. Have your boundaries set, and you can definitely initiate that contact and see what builds and what forms, what relationship. That's how a lot of really strong deity relationships are built. It comes from the person. It doesn't have to be them.
Let's see. That's all. There's one in the chat, it looks like. I was trying to work with one deity and realized after watching this that another deity had been trying to reach out. Should I keep trying to work with the one I was trying to work with, or should I step back and work with the other?
Again, that's one of those things where you have to kind of decide that for yourself. But if I were you, I would research. I would research both of them, see which one you resonate. Not okay. Don't only look at which one you resonate more because sometimes you might resonate with one more, but this one comes from a background that can help you more with what you're currently going through. So I would, if you don't want to work with both and you want to choose one, I would research them, find out the types of people that they are good for helping, find out how they're traditionally honored, what kind of offering. You want to base your choice on which one, number one, is right for your problem, which one could guide you the most, teach you the most, which one could help you through something. And then if you're really just not experiencing major problems right now, like your life is just cool, then go with the one that you resonate with more. Try that.
Anybody else? Any last minute questions? Last minute burning questions?
Burn
Have them. Let's have them. All right, hang on.
Your experiences, like if you have anything that you want to share.
Here's
We have a little bit of
uh,
time.
is there a book about all the different deities? Like you have
Yes.
in one spot.
Yes. There actually is. Look up I would give you an exact reference, but I don't think they're on Witchsea. Uh but look up Judica Isles and there's an encyclopedia of spirits, and there's also the encyclopedia of mystics, saints, and sages. I have all four. She has four encyclopedias. She also has the Encyclopedia of Witchcraft and the Encyclopedia of 5,000 Spells. But those are very informative. I really like her because she gives you not only the deities, she gives you other names they're known by. She gives you their origin story. She gives you the history, how people traditionally honored them. She gives you like their current days and their feasts. She gives you it even like in the mystic saints and sages, it breaks it down to the point of telling you um what kinds of people down to the career that you're working that they prefer to work with. It's crazy detail. I cannot even imagine how much work went into those books.
That's crazy. Can you list the books and authors, please?
I got it. There is two of them, and they both kind of cover different things. So if you're looking for, I would go with the spirits, um, Encyclopedia of Spirits. Well, Six Saints and Sages. I don't know. Oh my gosh, you need both. You don't need any, but you need both. And then also, if you're interested in a specific deity, look for books on that specific deity because there's lots of authors out there that write about their experiences and then they're giving things to you from in a historical, traditional, modern, and personal experience type way. I think those are the best.
Mm-hmm. If anyone works with or is interested in working with Nyx, we have an author on Witchsea, her own personal experience, and it's incredible.
Nyx is hard to find information on.
Yeah, so Magical Mountain Maven on Witchsea, it's incredible. And of course, Hecate, Courtney Weber, the Morrigan, Courtney Weber, she, knocks it out of the park. You think Hecate for
I
Courtney
think Courtney
Weber?
Weber.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
Hecate by Courtney Weber.
Mm-hmm.
I have it sitting right there, but I can't reach it. But I really love her take on it, and I've spoke with her before. She actually went to through very like extreme depths to dig up some of the information in that book. It's information that you cannot get in other books. It's information that's not easy to come by. So, and on all of the, it's all referenced in the back. So, I mean, it's not like of her, some of it is of her opinion because she talks about her personal experiences quite a lot through the book, but it's very grounded. It comes from a very not talking at you kind of way, but it's an excellent introduction. It has her history, it has her myths, it has Courtney's own experiences with it. It gives you ways to initiate contact. It gives you honoring rituals that you can do. There's lots of stuff in that book.
That's
I think
excellent.
that's definitely the best. Now, as far as Loki, I don't know. I've never been called to Loki. I don't work with Loki, so I can't say. Like Hecate, I have several books on Hecate, but I don't have one on Loki because this is not my energy. It's not what I've been called to.
Yeah. There's actually, for the last couple of minutes, we got a couple more questions.
Okay.
Let's see if we can get them in here. I've been looking into Hecate for months now because I myself have been at many crossroads. I lived at a crossroads, always loved and been drawn to wolves, dogs. Besides your upcoming workshop, which I will be in, do you have a solid recommendation how to properly research her minus the junk?
The books. Not only Courtney Weber. Okay, let me see if I can see it from here. I have. It's Let me grab it. It's like 5 foot from me. I just can't reach it. Okay, here's another really good one. So that's why I couldn't remember her first name, Cindy Brannon. This is the only one I have, Entering Hecate's Garden, but she has a whole. This one's really good, but she has a whole series. So there's between Courtney Weber's Hecate and Cindy Brannon's, you could have like a really good solid foundation on her. Cindy has this one, Entering Hecate's Garden. There's also Entering Hecate's Cave and Entering Hecate's Cauldron. So they have all 4, and they each have their own kind of like association. So this is like if you're like interested in herbs, plants. If you work with plants a lot in your magic, this is like plants and how they're related to Hecate. And then it's each one has its own little theme. So it's going to give you a more rounded. Getting like the whole set would give you a very rounded viewpoint from multiple different angles of how to work with her. Keeping Her Keys. Yeah, isn't that's a book too, right? Keeping Her Keys. I've seen that floating around.
Podcast? He's saying it's a podcast.
I know, but she's saying Keeping Her Keys is her podcast. But I think she has a book called Keeping Her Keys too, right?
Oh, cool. Yep. Carrie says there is Keeping Her Keys book too. That's awesome. All right. Well, I think we are right there. So we want to thank all of you for coming tonight and spending time with us. We really appreciate it. Monday, 5:30 Eastern, Animal Familiars. So that one will be a cool one. So hopefully
it's another one where I'm gonna make a bunch of people mad, probably.
I think they like that anyway, so it's okay.
So I'm gonna be honest.
Be honest. All right, everyone, have a really great weekend, and we will catch you on Monday.
Bye.
Bye-bye.